live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Oh, thank you, John. Any idea what this is, John?
Big piece of metal. That's a railway spike.
It's an old railway spike. It's hand fashioned. Each one of these railway spikes had to be molded by a blacksmith. This would be the same. This was pulled from the CPR line that ran from Orangeville through to Teeswater, right behind our farm at Arthur, Ontario. Arthur was on the route. This was a milk run. The train went along about twice a day, picked up cream and took it to the creamery in Orangeville. And someone, actually a distant relative, pulled this out from the railway. The railway is long gone, but I guess he found this and he just sent it to me. It's really interesting because this would be the same style of spike, all hand done. Thousands, tens of thousands of them that was used to build the railway across Canada. Very historic. So, when you stop and think of the amount of work just in making thousands and thousands of railway spikes, all done, you can see the hammer marks. I mean, somebody had to take a piece of steel, cut it or whatever, and forge it and whack it and then pound it into the tie. I just thought I would show you that.
I bet you they did that right across Canada in significantly less time than it takes us to put a track from Ottawa U to Blair Station.
Yes, you're probably right.
Right.
The blacksmith shops, of course, would have followed as they progressed westward and in some cases eastward. The blacksmith shop would have followed them because there would be many other things that the blacksmith shop would be required. I mean, the blacksmith shop, in all probability, in those days, was making the hammers, the sledgehammers, and a number of the pry bars and so forth. All of the stuff that they used to lay those tracks. When you stop and think of that, sometimes we get down on ourselves in this country. With we're flagellating ourselves now over residential schools, etc. But I mean, the history of this country is so fascinating. And so incredible. I mean, in order just to lay that rail, have you ever driven across the Rocky Mountains?
I've not. I've been up through Jasper, so from Edmonton up to Jasper and to the Rockies that way. But
so you've seen the mountains.
Oh yes, of course.
I mean, just having to forge a rail line through those mountains. But you know what was the worst, the most difficult, was the muskeg. All the swampland in northern Ontario. Once they got into the prairies, it was fly time, okay? They just shunk. They just shot ahead. Into the Rockies, of course, then it became much more difficult.
Right.
But putting it through the swampland, the track, they'd lay some track, and the next day the track would be gone, sunk down into the swamp. So, but the feet, and don't forget, all of this time, they would be fighting insects, mosquitoes. It must have driven them crazy. This is the day before DDT and off and all the rest of it. And in many cases, the men who laid this track, and there were a lot of Chinese involved, as we know, were not properly clothed either. They had no idea. And then they laid track during the winter as well. Can you imagine laying track in blizzard? So in the summertime, in the spring, you've got the insects just driving you crazy. And in the winter time, you've got the blizzards and the snow and the bitter cold. Yeah. But you know what? We did it.
Yep.
A great accomplishment, and many others. Just, for many years, Debbie and I had a cottage on the Rideau system. Just when you drive down or boat down the Rideau system, and you just think of all the accomplishments and all of that, it was done without the age of mechanization. It was essentially all done, including the big dams and all the rest of it, with horsepower and human power. Just the feat. Like if we tried to do that today, I don't know if I imagine we'd be able to do it today. But man, oh man, they were not only were they hard workers and very innovative, but they had amazing skills. They had amazing engineering skills as well. They had to. All right, let's get on to the. Now that I've given you a little bit of history lesson, but that's just a lesson from one railway spike. Good. Oh, by
That's
the way,
fantastic.
the train that ran twice daily from Orangeville up through to Teeswater. I guess the creamery was not an orange. The creamery was they called it a creamery in those days. It'd be a dairy today. Was in Teeswater. I guess that's why the train went there. It traveled so slowly. What would happen is it was hard for the train after coming to a full stop to get going again. Okay, so what they would do, they would slow down. Each farmer at the back of his farm, they're running up against the rail track. There was a big stand there, big wooden stand that they had built, and they would have the cans of milk and cream, mostly cream, sitting there. And so the train would slow down, and someone, obviously with a very strong arm, would reach out as the train was driving by, okay, and grab those cans and pull them inside without
Ooh.
the train stopping. But it was so slow. I forget how long it took. Took several hours. I mean, today, a train, if there was one, which there isn't, would probably be able to do it in 40 minutes or something, I guess, maybe less. But in those days, it was about 4 to 5 hours. It traveled so slowly. We called it not the CPR, but the sleepy R. It was known wide and far as the sleepy R.
So what I take away from your lesson today then is we were mocking the train systems we were building even back then, just like we do with the LRT today.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. That's my
I
takeaway.
once, by the way, I rode the trains a lot because I was sort of being shifted back and forth from grandparent to grandparent, from
Okay.
Aurelia to Arthur. I remember in the this is during the war, and the Union Station. If anybody is old enough to remember, the scene at Union Station in Toronto was quite incredible. Thousands and thousands of soldiers there, and of course their wives, families, mothers, etc., would be there crying and saying goodbye, and then and it was incredible. And of course, almost all of the passenger cars used up for soldiers to take soldiers to the East Coast and ships across to Europe. So I remember one time getting in, honest to God, don't forget this is the age of steam, okay? Steam trains. Getting into a coach, there was only one coach, a passenger coach, on that Orangeville to Teeswater. So my little sister and I'd be 7, 8, 9 years old, got into a passenger coach that, honest to God, had gas lights. And the seats were all wicker. I never saw one again. That was obviously the last passenger coach available, but I'll never remember that. It was beautiful. It was all beautiful, but it was all gas lights, those big hanging lights, and everything.
Right.
They had pulled it out of a yard someplace. I know I have to get on to the topic here. I have a number of questions from my listeners today, and for you as well, John. Number one, do you think our children should be vaccinated? Latest figures indicate, I'm surprised to see this, that the majority of new COVID cases are among children under the age of 12. But in most cases, not them all, but in most cases, when children come down with COVID, it is not very serious. Very few children require hospitalization, although some do. But of course, it may be that most of them do not become very ill, but a child can spread COVID just as easily as an adult. So what's your position here? It's quite controversial. Apparently, about half parents say, yeah, they want their children to be vaccinated. And the other half, including those who have themselves been vaccinated, are saying, no, I don't think so. What's your view, John? You've got an idea here?
Wow. It's the first time I've really had to think about it. And of course, I don't have kids, so I don't have to think about it. I think it's one thing to make the decision for yourself as an adult. But yeah, I can certainly see how a number of people would be questioning what they're putting into their kids. I think I would be reluctant. But on the other hand, I remember, I mean, don't most kids have to have a number of vaccines before they go to school now anyway?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's what I would wrestle with. I would lean towards getting my kids vaccinated.
Fair enough.
Just because I think it's the right thing to do.
All right. I I would welcome some other thoughts on this. I have another question in that regard. In your opinion, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, should Canadians returning from a visit to the United States have to undergo that costly, complicated PCR test? What a stinker that thing is. All Canadians entering the United States must be fully vaccinated. I support that. But they are not required to show any COVID tests when you enter the United States. However, when we Canadians return home, even after just maybe a couple of hours over there at a shopping mall or something, we are stuck with a test that in some cases can be difficult to track down, to obtain, and costs, they tell me, somewhere in the range of about $150 to $200 each. Thus, a family of four, let's say, returning from, a few days at Disney World, they would be stuck with an 7 or 8 or 900 bill just for the PCR tests, even though they are all fully vaccinated. I don't know about you, but I think it's nuts. I think probably the original idea was to discourage day or even overnight travel into the United States. I mean, who's going to spend, $150, $170 to, drive over to Ogdensburg, do a little bit of shopping over there, and come back and then have to pay, let's say, $175 for a test? I don't think too many people are going to do that. And interestingly enough, in a lot of the stories I read, the Americans, just south of the border, we're all so happy, the Canadians are coming back. They're going to shop at our stores, put us back on our feet. But none of the stories that I saw had pointed out to the Americans that, hey, wait a minute, Canadians are not going to come over the border to shop in your stores just for a day or overnight. Because when they go back, they got to pay about another $170. Plus, they got to find a place to get this damn PCR test. So I think it's nuts. What do you think? Do you see any need for it? Keep in mind, all Canadians visiting the United States got to be double vaccinated, but there's no testing. But we Canadians, those same Canadians who are allowed untested into the United States, when they try to come back into their own country says, the Americans may buy the double vaccination, but we don't. You got to have another big test here. I'd love to hear from some of you on that. John, just go through the how people get in touch with us once again.
Sure. First and foremost, let's give a big thanks to everybody who shares this on their social media. That's the best advertising we've got. So thank you for that. You can text in. You can call in. We're at 613-413-2217. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitch, if you're watching on Twitter, you just post your comments like you would if you were commenting on any thread, and they will pop up, and I will get as many onto the screen and read as many to Lowell as possible. But again, we really, really, really want to hear from you on the phone. 613-413-2217.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm glad you mentioned once again how important it is to share. For several days when we were mentioning this, there were a lot of shares, and it helped to build the listenership. But we haven't been getting as many shares recently. I mean, it's real easy to do. Just share and spread the message. We don't have a lot of money here. This is not Bell Media. This is not Rogers. This is not Shaw. This is Blast the Radio, Lowell Green and John Milkey.
Operating from my basement, loud and proud.
Yeah. So you can help us if you think this kind of programming, whether you agree with everything I say or not, if you think it's important that there be a sort of second point of view, and you think more people should know about it, all you have to do is just share. We would really, really be appreciative. Let's hear from Julie. Julie, what's your view here?
My view on the PCR test is ridiculous, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
We have a PO box in Ogdensburg. We do a lot of online shopping, and we send it to a lot of the stuff to the States. We like to go over shopping for one day to do our groceries. We're not going to do that because of the $150, $200 test that we need to come back. But there's a loophole that I found. I was reading an article today, and some Walgreens are offering PCR tests for free.
In the United States? Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that was in the Ottawa Citizen, Julie, that article.
Really?
That was on the CBC, I think.
Okay, yeah, because
CBC
I did see that, and that's kind of the trick that Canadians are finding, Lowell. They go into a Walgreens, they get the test for free because Americans are subsidizing the tests. 72 hours later, they're good to come back to Canada.
Actually, 3 hours. They get their test within 3 hours if you do the drive-through Walgreens.
Now, is there a Walgreens in Ogdensburg?
I don't know. I was going to actually check. I just haven't had time to.
All right, so you can at Walgreens in the United States, not only can you buy all the guns you could ever want, but you can now get a free PCR test. Thank you,
And get
Julie.
back to Canada. Not a problem.
Hey, yeah, don't try to bring the guns back into Canada, please. Thank you very much. That's good information. I'll check into that a little bit further. Thank you, Julie. John, we got any more comments on any of this?
We do, and we got an interesting question. Do Americans coming to the Canadian side, do they have to show a PCR test when they're coming to Canada?
You know what?
Right?
I don't know. I would presume they do. I mean, if Canadians have to, I would presume that everybody coming in here. Now, if I'm wrong on this, I'd appreciate hearing. You know what? The whole thing is so crazy because, I mean, for months, maybe the better part of a year, people were arriving in this country from China, from Brazil, from the United States, from India, from everywhere, including places that had terrible, terrible COVID problems. They were arriving here. There were no tests. There was nothing. They just came here and shoot into the countryside. And, you know, Trudeau's government was warned time and time again, and including by me, because I experienced this. I arrived from the Bahamas. There was absolutely no testing. It was ludicrous. People just were, and at the same time I arrived, there was a huge plane come in from India. There was no testing. There were no questions. Nothing. Everybody just was allowed in. So why, you know, if you could come in here from Brazil or the United States, you know, 2 or 3 months ago, and not even a simple question, I don't know why we Canadians have got to now fork over $170. That's none of this. A lot of this makes no bloody sense whatsoever. John, you got some text coming in there?
Yeah, we're getting some answers for you there, Julie. 3 people now have said there is no COVID testing at the Walgreens in Ogdensburg, so apparently they're not offering it there. Cheryl says,
Okay.
I think Americans coming to Canada are not subject to that rule, and Lizzie backs that up to say, no, they're not. They show proof of vaccination, and that is it. My friend crossed over from the USA.
Really?
Yes.
I'll have to check that out. I'm
Right,
not sure
yeah.
if that's true. Doesn't seem to make any, but then, as I say, a lot of things involving this don't make any sense. Why would Americans be allowed to come in? I mean, the incidence of COVID is much higher in the United States than it is here. Holy suffering doodle cats.
Yeah, that's worth us looking into.
Yeah, I will. Any other texts coming in?
A text, and again, somebody just asked, what is the number? It is on your screen, but here it is again for you, 613-413-2217.
I'd like some comments, thoughtful comments from some of you on whether you agree that children should be vaccinated or not.
Sure, we do have some of those comments.
All right, let's hear what people have to say about that.
On Facebook, Kathy says, leave this decision to the parents. Lori says, why not? We're all vaccinated. We were all vaccinated when we were kids. Sherry says, my older 2 have theirs. My 10-year-old twins have their arms ready. Craig says, no. Lois says, it's sad that young children under 5 are not allowed to visit their grandparents in a long-term care facility, especially when they are getting up in age. And that's it as far as vaccine comments that I was able to cut and paste. And
I'd like to some more comments. It seems to me this is a fairly important issue here.
I believe so too.
So if some of you people, give it a little bit of thought. And this is the last question as it applies to vaccines. I have some other questions here. But before we do that, I just want to get a word in here for our good friends, and I mean good friends at Shields and Pakenham. Here is a business, folks, that has been there in the same location, the same family since 1947. As I've mentioned before, first thing you see when you go in, well, there's a neat little butcher shop there, which, by the way, features only locally grown beef. So far, Trudeau has not been able to, or the eco-fascists have not been able to shut butcher shops down. So the first thing you see is this butcher shop, and then above the butcher shop is a picture of three men. It's the grandfather who started the business, the son who ran it for many years, and now the grandson who's now running the business. So it's a family operated business since 1947. They have a huge warehouse. Don't be fooled by the small storefront on right in the main street in Pakenham. They have a huge warehouse, absolutely filled. So most of the appliances that you could possibly want are there in stock. And if you want to check it out, just go to shields.ca, SCHEELS.ca, and click on appliances. There you will see all of the appliances, a breakdown of different kinds of appliances, the different brands, price ranges, and of course the savings. And I just want to remind you, look out, because January 1st, price of appliances almost for sure going to skyrocket. I've already explained that in some detail. Shields.ca. John, any more texts, or do I move on to another topic?
Nope. We've certainly got some texts. Where'd we go here? I'm just looking for my Twitch feed. There we go. Ken says, yes, the kids should be vaccinated. He says that as a parent of two. Julie says, if I had school-age children, my kids would absolutely be vaccinated. An email from Robert in Carlton Place to Lowell at blasttheradio.com. He says, yes to kids getting vaccinated. It is unfortunate that parents get to make the decision for them. He says no to the ridiculous and non-essential testing. If a traveler has symptoms, then require a test. Make it free so people will actually get it. Comments from Rob. Another email here. The USA test. Lisa says, I absolutely do think they should have to be tested before coming back into Canada. They could be bringing back a variant worse than the ones currently spreading. And we have a text. Again, the number here, 613-413-2217. Canada needs to drop this test for Canadians. Exactly, Lowell. I can't bring the family down to Florida because of this. They urged us strongly to get the jab. Now that we have it, stop the tests. The government dragged their heels on closing the borders, and now they are dragging their heels on stopping the testing. After all, we are mostly all vaccinated.
Thank you. Debbie and I will be eligible for a booster shot, third shot, on December the 6th. That's exactly 6 months since the last shot that we received. And that apparently is what you're supposed to do. You are eligible for a booster shot. And apparently we all over the age of 18, I guess now, are eligible. But you're supposed to wait at least 6 months after the last shot that you had. So on December 6th, you can be sure that Deborah and Lowell will be there at our favorite little pharmacy for our booster shot. What about you? John, are you going to get a booster, do you think?
If it is recommended, yes.
Well, I think they are being recommended now. There's been some confusion, but my understanding is, and increasingly we seem to be getting this information, that may not be absolutely necessary, but not a bad idea as a precaution. And my feeling is, you know what? If it raises the chance that we'll survive or not catch this, why not do it? 99 times out of 100, you hardly feel a thing anyway, so why not, right? So if anybody has any thoughts on that, how about you, folks? You're going to get the booster? Do you think it's necessary? Are you worried about it? Now, I know that some of you, Craig, for example, who doesn't believe in the vaccine at all, you're going to say no. But most people already have been double vaccinated. God bless you. And as a consequence, as I mentioned this yesterday and the day before, Ontario today is probably the safest, as far as COVID goes, safest jurisdiction in all of North America. Our infection rate is on a per capita basis is the lowest in Canada. Our hospitalization rate is the lowest, and our death rate is the lowest. And by the way, if it's the lowest in Canada, you can be damn sure it's by far the lowest in the United States. So Ontario has that distinction. A lot of complaints, a lot of people opposed to the lockdowns and so forth. Maybe it was overreaction. I don't know, but it's worked. We now have the best record in all of Canada, probably all of North America. So there you go, folks. We paid a price, but at least we got a reward, right? I have another question, not related to vaccines. I'd like your opinion on this, an educated opinion here. Do you think that downtown office towers in Ottawa will fill up with workers again in the next few months? Or do you think that large numbers of people will continue to work from home? This is a very, very important question for a large number of reasons. In my family, just as one example, I have a daughter and a son who have been working from home for more than a year now. They love it, and both will tell me, and I believe them, that they are more productive at home. They don't have to fight the traffic every morning. They are more productive at home, and they can prove it, than they were at work. And there's no way that they want to go back. And in fact, neither one of them believes that they ever will go back. So, and apparently there's a large numbers of people, including large numbers of public servants, who feel the same. So it begs many questions for planners here, city planners. Um, is downtown Ottawa going to become I won't call it a ghost town, but a semi-ghost town? This is going to affect the decision of many businesses in downtown Ottawa. If you're not going to have nearly the same traffic that you used to, maybe you're going to think twice about extending that lease. Maybe landlords are going to have to lower lease rates. I don't know. And of course, the other thing that's very important, what does this say about the future of LRT or public transit for that matter? I personally do not think that LRT, public transit, will ever see the kind of passenger quotas numbers that we had before. I think that passenger numbers are way down now, as you know, and I believe will continue to be down. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they don't decline a little bit more as more and more people and more companies come to realize, hey, we don't need these big expensive offices in downtown Ottawa. We don't need to pay for the big expensive parking and so forth, all of the extra expenses. Our people can work very successfully from home. Saves us a ton of money. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if, in fact, the numbers of people going into downtown Ottawa continue to drop. Although I must tell you, every time I go into Ottawa, I go to the Heart Institute and more recently the Civic. The traffic just astounds me. John, I say, Debbie continually says they must be just circulating. They must go there, turn around, and come back, and just keep going around and around and around. Because they tell us about half the office towers are vacant or semi-vacant, and yet the highways are still jammed with people. I don't know where they're going.
Costco.
But I don't think that we will ever see ever again. Certainly not in your lifetime, and I know not in mine. The kind of numbers in downtown Ottawa we saw before. What's your feeling, folks? And if anybody has any personal experience in this, love to hear from you.
John? I agree with you wholeheartedly, and the consensus seems to be that, people don't see the downtown being what it was anytime soon. Julie, for example, who just called you, she's a public service worker. She says, I can tell you if the federal government goes back to the downtown core, it won't be the same. It will be a hybrid system. Ray says, just start filling it with the homeless now. Glenn says, I completely disagree. The new normal will soon be falling by the wayside. Leanne says, and I'm not sad about the parking lots. They kept raising the prices to no end. Ann says, I don't know, wear a suit and tie to PJs to work. Why not? Let me see some of the other comments. We've got a number of subjects in the air here. So Christine says, one thought about the children being vaccinated. If you have an 11-year-old getting the child version of the vaccine and then they turn 12, will they then need to get the full vaccination to get into restaurants and travel? That's a question for your doctor. I think, Christine, I can't answer that. Lowell, can you?
No. It's a good question. No, it's interesting.
Yep, it is. Mike says, of course they should be vaccinated. Peter says, vax the children. Craig says, according to the Government of Canada, all travelers are eligible to enter Canada if they qualify as fully vaccinated travelers, regardless of citizenship. A pre-entry molecular test is required for all travelers. Booster juice for Glenn on December 15th and for his wife as well. Lori says, yes, I'll take whatever. COVID is with us forever. Peter says, January 2022. Peter will be getting his booster shot. Ann says, I will get number 3. Ray says, and I will get number 4 and number 5 and number 6 and so on. Kim adds, me too. So there you go. Some of the comments coming in.
Well, I think that there's growing evidence that COVID is probably with us, just like the flu, and that in all probability we will have to get a shot. We'll have to get a flu shot and a COVID shot probably every spring,
Yep.
every fall, whatever it is. Wouldn't surprise me at all. You know what? You can laugh at it. You can poke fun at it. You can be angry about it, but we're damn lucky that we have a vaccine to do this. Thank you all, folks. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.